business, and I've got one too. You can't mind your business. What's the matter with you?
Welcome to the Brand Shorthand Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Vandergrift, and with me today is the commander of content, Lorraine Kessler. Lorraine, how are you today, this fine fall day?
I love it. Anytime you call me a commander, that's right up my alley.
All right.
Yeah, the weather has been spectacular in this part of Ohio. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Able to sit out back with the new puppy and light the fire pit and just really relax and enjoy.
Well, that's great. How's Riz doing?
Well, she had a little setback this morning. I don't know what's going on, so we're giving her some probiotics to,
Okay.
those little digestive juices and small puppies. Who knows what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, this is our next to last episode of season number 2.
That's crazy.
And also the big 50th celebration, which I see you're wearing the t-shirt today.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing the impossible.
Yep.
I am, right? Very good. Well, last time we kind of started off the podcast with some bland company slogans, if you recall.
Yeah.
Well, now as a follow-up to that, I want to play some company jingles and see how many we can get.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to, I'm just going to play one, and you kind of go, whatever the name is, with what you think it is. See if you can get it in a couple notes. You ready?
Yep.
Oh, I'd love to be an
Astronaut wiener.
That I started off with a softball.
Wasn't it like last year or something? They wanted to change wiener to Frankfurter.
Yeah.
And we were like, what's going to happen to the song? I mean, it's the whole shtick, right?
Yeah. Well, they went back to it, remember?
Yeah.
They gave up.
Because this year I saw these posts about the Wiener Mobile, not the Frankfurter Mobile, being all around.
Right.
So.
Okay, here's the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a break, give me a break, break me off a piece of that
Kit Kat bar.
There you go.
That's my husband's favorite candy, and I can't believe it took me that long to get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I was never good at, what was that game show? Play this tune or whatever.
Yeah. Name that tune.
I was never good.
I can name that tune, Frank, in one note.
Yeah. Some people could.
Yeah, they could. Yeah. Okay, here's a little more difficult one because it hasn't been used in a while. Okay.
$5 foot long.
Is that Subway?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. I don't remember the jingle in that case. I just remember the promotion for the 5 foot. What is that called? I messed it up, but I just remember.
Yeah, the $5 foot long.
Yeah, I was saying the 5 foot. I mean, that's a heck of a Subway.
The 5 foot. Yeah.
The 5 foot Subway submarine.
Well, and what's interesting is Subway's really hurting right now.
Oh,
they're in Hurt City. I see more and more of them closing locally, and it's just a shock. They got away from the fresh idea because I think they were seeing all these other different types of fresh come into the market. I mean, the Chipotles of the world, the Blaze Pizza where you pick your toppings. I think that was just a credential to them. Like, hey, look at the pattern everyone's following, but we're still that unique, fresh sub. Instead, I think they went to so much promotional marketing and they just lost that idea in the mind of being fresh. So,
well, it didn't help that Jared was fresh in a very different way. Okay. I mean, that really put, this is the thing we say, either you make a celebrity or if you hire a celebrity, you are always at the mercy of whatever scandal might follow that person. And his was a pretty big one.
Well, and what's interesting about that is Jared was a local franchisee's marketing. They started with that. And all the franchisees kind of insisted that Subway pick him up nationally. And then they did so. Things didn't really change. They got rid of him. It still didn't change. The local franchisees said, bring him back. They brought him back. and he got huge. And I don't
Yeah.
mean that personally. Like, no, he shrunk.
No, he got
He got
small,
small,
and they got big.
but his reputation was huge. But then his reputation was very fresh, as you point out. So you can live and die by influencers, right? And celebrities. Well, that's exactly what happened.
That was a bad one. But I read too that just this past month, the corporate called one of the only all franchisee meetings
Mhm.
to discuss how to get out of the jam they're in terms of their drop in same store
Mhm.
sales and across the board. So that's pretty drastic.
It is. Okay, let's do another one that might be a little, I don't know. This goes back so long that I think that this will at least be in your head. You may not be able to name the brand, but that's kind of the goal of the jingle. So hopefully this works out. Here we go.
800-588-2300
Empire.
Yep.
Yeah, the carpet people.
Yep.
Right? Right? Oh, wow.
Yep.
And that was Chicago. I didn't realize they were out of Chicago.
Yeah.
Hey, that was pretty ingenious.
Well, yeah, you remember the company? Well, maybe if you listen to the whole jingle and you get the phone number. So you got the response mechanism built in there.
Right,
And then, of course, the jingle keeps it in your head. So,
right.
yep. Okay, let's try another one here.
Like a good neighbor,
State Farm is here.
there.
There, State Farm is there. We'll forgive you since you're not musically inclined. I'm sure the lyrics don't go with it.
If I sang it, I probably would get it, Mark. But you have told me many times, please don't sing.
No, this is a jingle episode, so we're releasing you from the normal requirement of not singing.
Okay.
Okay? So,
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
yeah, let's see if we can get this next one. You ready? Because this one, when I listened to it, I thought, I don't know if I remember that. But as a kid, I always remembered it. So here goes.
Frosted Lucky Charms.
They're magically delicious.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, the Lucky Charm one. Of course, that one's easy. It has it in there.
Lucky Charm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was
magically delicious.
Yep.
That's the key line.
Now this one,
which means it's loaded with tons of sugar, and it puts your kid on a high for the whole day.
exactly. This one might take you a little bit. Let's see.
I'm a big kid now.
Okay, they never say the brand in it.
I don't know that one.
Huggies.
Oh my gosh.
Or their pull-ups.
Yeah. What year was that? Do we know?
I think probably in the 90s. If I had to,
well, that's probably why.
If I had to recall, you wouldn't have had kids in the 90s. Your kids were past that stage, weren't they?
They were in their going to their teens, and so that's a whole other, shtick.
Yeah. Well, this next one you're going to get real easily, and you can sing it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plop, plop, fizz, fizz.
Oh, what a relief it is. Yeah, that's a great one.
So that's a good one.
And every time I take Alka-Seltzer, I think of that jingle because it's actually what you do with the product. Right?
Yeah.
You plop, plop, fizz, fizz, then you drink it down.
So anyhow, this goes to the sensory of the auditory creating memorability in the mind.
Right. Connection. Yep.
And so that's kind of our theme today is how do you touch into senses beyond just the visual? Because you could have the auditory like that. Obviously, visually, you can have they actually have animated logos now. There's touch, which would be haptic. So different ways to touch the senses. And I guess the question is, the more the senses are touched with a brand, with something that's unique to a brand, does the memory go up? Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So some of these, they might not be at the forefront, but the moment we start hearing plop, plop, fizz, fizz, we don't have to go any further. We know it's Alka-Seltzer, right?
Right.
So, and maybe, I don't know how much they've used that. Maybe they need to bring it back. But in this tune of marketing beyond just visual, you had sent me an article titled Advertising as Impressionism.
Right.
that discussed other ways advertising and marketing can stem beyond just what something looks like. You want to give our listening audience an overview of that and summarize what that means?
Well, I think what it is that you make an impression
Mm-hmm.
on the audience, understanding that we're not one dimensional. The brain isn't one dimensional. And how we recall information is very varied. For example, we remember the greatest sense that we have attached to memory is smell, right? Like you remember your grandmother's house and how it smelled. You remember how something cooking on the stove smelled. You might remember how rain smells, for example. And it's tied to very key memories. It's the greatest sense. So it's really about understanding that as humans, we have far more senses at work and play, the ear being probably the greatest one for the English language and certainly for recall. So, what these jingles do is they make an impression that's lasting. I mean, they make an impression that is repetitive, and then in its repetition enhances recall. And so, and it's that recall that we then associate with that brand if it's done well and over time and what have you. Making an impression, if you do, I mean,
Yeah.
Birnbach said, you're not doing advertising to bore people, right?
Right.
Right. And the problem that we sometimes have as positionists is the position itself is not sexy. It's not necessarily memorable. It doesn't have the cachet. It's strategic. So it could be, we're going to be the lightest beer on the market. Well, that's not sexy in itself. How it's conveyed, how that idea is brought forward and conveyed, which is the creative's number one challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to think about, how am I going to make the right impression, a lasting impression, considering all the senses that the human would use and can bring to bear to get this idea across.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a slogan. And it's not just that the words matter, but taste great, less filling is a rhythm, right? I mean, me, who has no musical rhythm, but it does have a rhythm and has a rhythm the ear understands. So it's not just the words that make that slogan great. There's actually a musicality to it, even though it's not a jingle. And so this really is where words come alive in terms of a different dimension and to make that impression.
Well, my only challenge with the whole notion of it is he named it impressionism, which I immediately get a picture of a genre of art. And so I think with our capability of going into additional senses these days, I want to call it quantum marketing. How do you like that for a name?
No, I mean, I don't. And this is the thing.
I'm joking.
I don't think you mentioned that the article was from Bob Hoffman, who
Yes.
is a self-defined ad contrarian. And he is. And I really appreciate Bob. But when I read the article, he tends to do this, and I think he did in this. He tends to make mountains out of molehills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might think he's Baptist. It's an old joke, by the way.
Yes, it is.
But he in this case, I think he makes it like he sets up a false war
Mm-hmm.
between, I think, having the right strategy and impressionism, and then jumping to, what was it, quantum whatever.
I said quantum marketing. I was just kidding.
But of course, advertising has to make an impression. That's its number one job. I mean, why do it at all? Now, part of that is you can make an impression and not have a position or a premise, let's call the premise for a second, that's at all motivation to the audience. So they might remember the impression you make, but it doesn't make them buy. So I think these two things have to align, having the right position or premise that helps people make a choice for your product or service and not someone else's, executed or expressed in the most memorable way that makes the biggest impression. So I don't see these as, odds. I see these as different sides of the same coin.
Well, I think what he really touched on for me, pun intended, since we're talking senses here,
Yeah.
is the more you involve all of the senses, smell, touch, etc.,
Yeah.
that the more likely there's memory to it.
Oh, sure.
And I think the reason I went to quantum marketing, which I'm just
Mhm.
kidding, but really it is technology to a certain extent, because MasterCard announced last week that they are implementing what they call a haptic logo, HAPTIC,
Mhm.
and it means anything to do with touch. So what that means is that when you use your phone through, say, Apple Wallet or Google Wallet or any third-party wallet app that has your MasterCard logged into it, your phone will vibrate a distinctive haptic vibration, or what they're calling a haptic logo.
Mhm.
So you know how TV channels have identifying tones.
Nickelodeon.
But because of technology now, they're able to do something that would be called a haptic logo. That's a vibration that's unique to just MasterCard.
Sure. But let's not have technology overstep
Yep.
how humans behave and remember and think about things. If you could do a haptic and it didn't mean, I'm not talking about the haptic itself, what the touch is. I'm talking about if a haptic, a touch or feel a vibration, or that didn't help humans remember anything or make an impression, who cares about the technology? So technology is always a servant. It's never the lead it's never the master, in my opinion. It's just a new way to deliver something that works. But if it didn't work to begin with, who cares that you're able to deliver it?
Right, right. But they are. So it was interesting because the research after the haptic logo was created showed that people had a more positive experience because it was a confirmation that payment was made.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, if everybody gets doing this, then are you going to know necessarily which haptic logo goes with which brand?
yeah, it's going to get confusing.
So you could get back to that issue with clutter. And he just the inventor Raja Rajamanir he said his goal was to bring MasterCard into a new frontier,
Mhm.
right? Well, what comes to my mind, and again joking about the quantum marketing, is we're now getting into virtual reality, we're getting into augmented reality. The you have the Apple Gear with their headset, you have Google with their headset, you have all these headsets where people are going to start experiencing alternate, I guess, scenes and realities, in which now it'll be interesting to see if branding is brought into that in a way that touches the senses in yet another new way.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So my point on the technology was we really couldn't have haptic logos before, in that sense that, oh, my phone just vibrated in a certain way and it's a new sensory touch on a particular brand. Will that happen with these headsets? It'll be interesting to see. It's just that the point of all of this is how can we further make connection to the human emotion through the senses that is differentiating to a particular brand, right?
yeah, yep. Your last sentence says it all. I mean, that's
Yeah.
absolutely it. And technology is the servant to what people are, how the mind works and how people process information. And I think that, I actually think, things like the McDonald's do, right? That quick little thing
Yeah.
um, is genius. And so the more ways we can deliver that, who knows if they can ever deliver that in kind of a pulse rhythm
Yeah.
that would reinforce that. So, as one thing that technology has done in our industry as well as any other industry, is it just puts more opportunities on the plate, more ways of reaching people through these things that we know work: sight,
Mhm.
sound, whatever. It'll be real interesting if they ever can do like scent through your phone,
Mhm.
so you can smell Lucky Charms
Yeah.
or smell money if it's meant.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that would be a new frontier.
That would be that. I think that would be the new favorite scent for Christmas. I'm not sure, but
Yes, and it'll go down as you buy.
yeah. Yep. Okay, so you just said I'm loving it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do.
Yep.
We would classify that as probably more of a jingle because there's I'm a loving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the length of the jingle probably would either classify it as a jingle, or if it gets short enough,
Mm-hmm.
we have what are called audio logos. And this is kind of a fun experiment too for our listeners to see if they can get these. But I'm going to play a couple for you and you tell me if you can get these. Okay, because they don't have any words with them.
No. Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
here goes the first one.
Uh-huh. Okay, Intel inside.
Yes, very good. And that was really a genius move, because what was the challenge with Intel? Why don't you tell our listeners why it was very important to develop something around that brand?
Well, Andrew Grove, who was in charge of Intel at the time, first made the decision to only focus on these processors, right? And that was a big change from their business.
Well, it's because they're an ingredient inside of something. That's where.
So there's a great book, if anybody wants to read it, called Only the Paranoid Survive by Andrew Grove. But yeah, it's an ingredient marketing, kind of like Gore-Tex. And so how do you make that brand meaningful so that people are looking for hardware that has that particular component inside? And so it's a very unique study in ingredient marketing, and it's a good case study for anybody to study who has an ingredient that wants to hold a high bar with their supply chain, with the OEMs, and make their brand valuable so that the OEMs feel like there's a virtuous connection in allowing that promotion to define their brand. So to use, it makes me think, in a way, that began, that's a consumer pull-through campaign, right, to draw you to PCs with Intel inside. And typically that would be just a supply chain kind of business to business, product to OEM kind of thing. So I think there's more at play here than just even the advertising. At play is just even the thinking that was set, that said, hey, we can do more by going to the consumer and creating demand for a product that has Intel. And we're going to invest in that. And this is where CEOs have to make investment decisions. That was a very bold, I think, investment decision, to invest in the advertising, to create demand, to create memorability and all that. It also makes me think that I don't think we in the advertising world use these other devices enough.
I would agree.
I don't think we're thinking. I don't think we're thinking about it. I know I wasn't thinking about it as much. So this is a really good refresher course for me. I can think of a number of brands that we represented where having this kind of sound attached to the logo. Did you have a name for that?
Audio logo. Yep.
Okay, an audio logo I can go back now and say, wow, we should do an audio logo for that.
Well, here's a relatively new one,
Mhm.
even though they've been around for a while. I don't think this one was done until 2018. So let me know if you know this one. You ready?
Mhm. Sounds like the Law and Order TV show.
It's close, but not,
It's good.
it's on TV.
That's Netflix, right?
Netflix.
I
Yep.
watch Netflix like daily, and Hulu has one.
I know YouTube TV,
Yeah.
they have theirs.
Oh.
So there's just a bunch of different ones. How about this one? You ready?
Uh-huh. Do-do-do-do-do. Mark, I'm so bad at this. I mean, I know what it is.
T-Mobile.
T-Mobile.
Yep. It's funny because, some of these come real naturally, and I know you're going to get this next one because it goes way, way back.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah. Oh yeah, MGM.
Yep, you got it.
The Lion.
That one is.
And I probably would get Universal, and which is more of a whole song.
Yeah.
20th Century Fox.
Okay, let's do 20th Century. You ready? I got it queued up for you.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
Did
well,
I-
that's the additional part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you get that recording from like the silent film era?
Yeah.
It's a really old one.
Yeah, that is a really old one. That's when it was done on a. You could still hear the record scratches on it. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did.
Cool.
Now, do you have Hulu? Hulu has a pretty and Max has that you know, like static kind of thing going.
Yeah, yeah. Well, to get into the science portion of this episode, because
Mhm.
I know we have to draw it to a close here. The section of the brain that handles words and speech is actually different than the section of the brain that handles rhythm and music and touch.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
So now you're hitting both sides of the brain.
right.
And that's why there's studies where people with dementia or Alzheimer's won't know the names of their own children, but you play them a song they learned as kids and they can sing right along, hit every word.
That's
It
interesting.
it's just amazing because they're stored in different spots.
Yeah, I even
So
have to ask myself if I have children. That's what's. Oh yeah,
now, Lorraine, you're not that old. Come on
that's
now.
why I have pictures everywhere.
Yeah. Well, here's another one. This sounds like pseudoscience right on the surface, but
Mhm.
physical warmth even coincides with social warmth. They did this study in 2009 by Lawrence Williams and John Barg, I think it was. And they had half of the participants hold a hot cup of coffee and the other half held an iced coffee. Okay.
Yeah.
And in the first part of the study, the participants who held the hot coffee perceived a person with them as having a warmer personality than those who held iced coffees.
Wow.
So in the second part of the study, they found that the participants exposed to a hot therapeutic pad were more likely to choose to give a friend a gift, while participants exposed to a cold therapeutic pad were more likely to choose a gift for themselves.
Interesting. Wow.
So just being around physical warmth made people more socially warm,
Uh-huh.
showing that alongside music and haptics and audio, all the senses, I think have pretty drastic effects on people in the sense of
Yeah.
brands. Okay. Because it changes I think our intake valve. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that study. I'd have to look at that study because it sounds. It's like a lot of these studies. Sometimes you have to really dig in
Yeah.
deep to see because I'm sure if that cold drink had Crown Royal in it, it might be a different. It might be a different outcome, right?
That's true. That's true. Well, I said it could be
Yeah, yeah.
pseudoscience on
And I
the
mean,
cell.
I remember years ago, we all know that women, when they're pregnant, should not drink.
Right.
However, the ban on all alcohol is probably overstated. And the reason is the study they used to say that women drinking during pregnancy could lead to birth defects, whatever, ill effects. As you looked at the study, these women were heavy smokers too.
Ah,
So I mean, I always caution people really look at the methodology
mhm.
or for anything like this.
Yeah.
Like what really was the methodology and what were the people exposed to and what other conditions were simultaneously either not filtered out or were filtered in to make sure it's a clean study. So that's my skepticism on this particular study. I want to know more about the methodology.
Certainly. But I think the point being is the more you can grab the emotion with branding, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a haptic or the sound, anything like that. It's interesting to incorporate into marketing. As you said, it's a good reminder, right?
Yeah.
We don't even think jingles a lot of times. We don't think audio logos. Now we have to think haptic logos. There's the visual side of it we always think about, but things are changing significantly.
Well,
So
yeah, look at the webs. I mean, the web medium.
mhm,
We have treated it for years as a two-dimensional visual medium.
yeah,
So how many times you download a page and the logo comes up?
yeah,
Why isn't there an audio logo? I mean, I wouldn't use it haphazardly and I wouldn't use it for every logo under the sun.
yeah.
That'd be ridiculous. And that's one of the other things that happens. People just like go bonkers. But strategically, if you're thinking about what that company does
Hmm.
and who they're trying to touch and what their position is. If it's a feel good brand, right? Like, I just think you have to be thinking, is there an opportunity here? And are we missing it?
Well, I think that's a good place to stop today.
Okay.
And that
I feel
article,
really badly that I didn't get T-Mobile because I think that's one of the better parts of their marketing. And for those who are listening, the CEO is from Canton, Ohio,
yay.
and he's a really great guy. And I think he's done an amazing job with T-Mobile. I think that their marketing is really top notch. And I can't believe I missed that. But see, please, that's me. I'm just not good. I would never be on Name That Song. Never.
That's okay. That's okay. I think we all intake things differently, and that's what makes the world go round, and it's a beautiful thing. Um, it's a good reminder that when your brand is more surround sound, another pun intended, that
Yeah.
you're likely to hit more people with engaging them with the emotion. You may not remember the audio, but I do. Like, you name me a song right now from the 80s, and I can almost tell you where I was in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was my junior year abroad in Germany, or I was up at the local pool. I mean, I can hear a song from the 80s and almost tell you where I heard it first or where I hear it most often. Other people be into this haptic thing. Some people are into visual. That's your background. You're an artist,
Yeah.
so the visual memory that you have is much different than mine.
Well,
So
funny, my husband can remember every song from the 70s. He once sang them all to me on the way to Columbus because he didn't have a radio in his TR6.
oh jeez.
But the weird thing is he associates every song with a girl he was dating
Oh
at that
no.
time. So I also learned about all his old girlfriends.
That's definitely a good place to stop for today. I don't want to hear anymore. So thank you, listeners, for listening today, literally. And if you haven't liked, subscribed, or told your friends about the Brand Shorthand podcast, please make sure you do that. And my new audio logo for subscription is this: subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. And until next time, have an amazing day.
Do-do-do-do-do.
Monday.
Ain't nobody's business but my own.